Hey, what's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." Now, we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we are going to talk about a hard work. I was scrolling through Facebook, as I often do, and I saw a post from a friend of mine, and I've been thinking about this a little bit lately anyway. It's been on my mind, and his post was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'll read his post in a moment, but before we get into the meat of our podcast, I want to turn your attention to our sponsor. LaBeth Brewer sponsors the show, and we read her ad, and often people need a listening ear and support as they work through the varied situations of life. Sometimes those situations are so complex and overwhelming that you need some support, maybe even some extra support. This is why LaBeth started beamindfulsoul.com. At Be a Mindful Soul, LaBeth's mission is to offer anything from a listening ear and the advice of an older sister to help finding a professional in your area if that's what's needed. Be sure to go to www.beamindfulsoul.com and check out all the services that she has to offer. She can help answer your questions about therapy treatment or other mental health services that you may need. She also provides affordable assistance and support with resolving relationship conflicts, gaining and implementing more effective parenting skills, and she can help coach you through the steps you need to take in regards to finding the peace and stability that you deserve. That's www.beamindfulsoul.com. And we're thankful to LaBeth for sponsoring the show. Now, let's go to Facebook. I want to read to you this post that got me to, well, it didn't really get me to thinking. It was just, it already had me, I was already thinking, and then this post really resonated with me. First off, good to see everybody. There's 14 of you in the live stream. If everyone here would put a comment, give a thumbs up, subscribe, notification bell, invite your friends, all that, you could be the algorithm for us and help us grow exponentially. And as I've said before, I believe Christianity Now and Cogitations, we hit way above our weight class because of the interactive group of people that consume our content that we have. Jonathan Exum, it's good to see you. Barry Odell with Mammoth Spring Church of Christ, good to see you. Incidentally, I have started a Substack. All right, I have started a Substack. And if I click on here, though, right now, it's telling me that this page isn't working. ChristianityNow.substack.com. It redirected me too many times. Try cleaning or clearing my cookies. I don't know how to clear my cookies. It works on... Anyway, I'm still going to do this. I'm going to copy the link address, and I'm going to put it in here, and maybe y'all click it, and y'all tell me if it takes you... Oh, it got the... Okay, so it got the same message. Oh, well, that stinks. All right, so that means I need to work on it, because it doesn't do it on Safari. It doesn't do it on my Mac. So anyway, maybe I got to figure out what's going on. That's right. Give them to the Cookie Monster. Now, let me read you this post. This is from Nathan France, and he's a gospel preacher in California. During our time in California, where we currently work, I have heard every kind of criticism and snarky comment come from brethren who live outside the state. They adopt the Jonah syndrome. My response to that is to ask them to come labor with us. Of course, no one does. They ask the same question Nathanael did of Nazareth. Can any good come from California? And of course, you remember Nathaniel wanted to know, can any good thing come from Nazareth? Well, my response has always been the same as Philip. Come and see. I have asked repeatedly, or I have been asked repeatedly, how I can work and live here because of the politics. My wife had the best and most brilliant answer to that. We're not here for the politics. It is impossible to be complacent in a place that needs the gospel seed sown. It is not a comfort zone like places with so many more congregations and the mecca of lectureships. Instead, there are some outstanding preachers and members who are doing the Lord's work with a fortitude like I have never seen anywhere else. We don't see it as a quote unquote mission field, like it has been so often described by people who have never lived here. We see it as home, and like anywhere, another opportunity to fulfill Christ's commission. I won't get into the vast, beautiful landmarks like Yosemite, which still blows my mind. Thank you for the many wonderful Christians in California striving to make disciples. You are making a difference. And you know what? Oddly enough, the comment section is very good. Okay. I'm really thankful for the comment section. In fact, I commented, let me see if I can find my comment. So here's my response. I got the same when I focused on Canada. It had caused me, or it has, I need to edit that. It has caused me to develop a disdain for the comforts of the Bible Belt. Now, Christians, don't leave this live stream saying that I have developed a disdain for the Bible Belt. It is a disdain for the comfort of the Bible Belt. Okay? I would trade the problems of liberal Canada, and might I add California, although I didn't on the post, any day for the apathy of the Bible Belt. Now, I understand my brush is broad. I understand that not everybody is apathetic. I understand that most people who consume my content, most people who consume the content of people like the digitalbiblestudy.org folks and stuff like that, that doesn't apply to them. My sentiments do not apply to everybody in the Bible Belt. That being said, it still is an issue. Complacency and apathy is an issue in the Bible Belt. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the Bible Belt, let me put a map up on the screen, because I have a lot of listeners from outside of the United States, and they might not know what I mean when I say Bible Belt. Oops. Oh, I was trying to scroll the chat on the wrong screen. Bear with me. Right here. All right. If you'll notice on the screen, there's a map of the United States, and the dark green in the south and east is considered to be the Bible Belt. And again, the Bible Belt doesn't have hard edges. You might make the case that even northern Florida would also be considered the Bible Belt. But, and also go to Utah. Utah is dark green. Forget Utah. That's a animal all its own. So you got Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and I hope I got Arkansas in there. But anyway, all of those states are considered to be the Bible Belt. You will not be able to throw a rock in those states without hitting a building that hangs the shingle of some type of church, okay? In an area like this, it is very easy to be complacent, because after all, everybody you meet is quote unquote saved. Everybody you meet is quote unquote a Jesus follower. All right? A Jesus follower. It is difficult. There are difficulties working in that area as a gospel preacher, as a soul saver, as an evangelist, just like there are difficulties working in an area where there are no quote unquote Christians. It's just that the differences are different. It's a weird turn of phrase. The differences are different. The differences are not the same. The challenges are different. Okay. I think it shows, quite frankly, egocentrism on the part of the people saying, like, for instance, to Nathan, well, how can you be out there and amongst all of that, dot, dot, dot? Well, the reason I'm out there is because people need Jesus. The reason I'm in Canada is because people need Jesus. I would rather trade the problems of a place like Canada for the problems of the Bible Belt any day of the week, because it's almost impossible to steer a parked car. If you're going to try to help somebody, if you're going to try to get somebody on the straight and narrow, if they're just parked on the side of the road and not driving, buddy, it's very hard to move them. They have to have some power in and of themselves. And it's much easier to steer a driving car than it is a parked car. In other words, it seems like all the time that I spent in the Bible Belt, people was just like, well, we're here. We're in the Bible Belt. I'm a Church of Christer, so I'm saved. Everybody that I talk to is saved, so what's the need in talking to anybody? I'm not saying that that's what you are. I'm not saying that that's even the majority of the people of the congregation where you are. I'm just saying that's what I've experienced, and that's what I've noticed, and I've talked to enough people that labor in the Bible Belt that that's what they've noticed too. Now, let me talk about my Substack. Yeah, there are plenty of denominations. John Exum says he's north of the Bible Belt. Yes, you are actually in Missouri. Let me bring it up again. Yeah, so if you're in, and that's the thing, so if you're in southern Missouri, I would say that southern Kansas, southern Missouri, that probably you would still be considered in the Bible Belt. Like I said, I wouldn't say, and I'm not arguing with you or pushing back on you. I'm just making the point again that this map is a map, and it's got hard edges, and the Bible Belt doesn't have hard edges, is the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, let me hide this. All right. Now, oh, you're in northeast Missouri. Yeah, I'd say you're out of the Bible Belt. Yeah, you're not in the Bible Belt at all. So anyway, now back to the podcast. On my Substack, I wrote an article. I'm going to read this article. It's called "The Danger of Apathy: Navigating Spiritual Complacency in the Heart of the Bible Belt." Residing in the heart of the United States Bible Belt provides a unique setting where faith and religious values are deeply embedded in the culture. This environment, while rich in spiritual nourishment, also presents a subtle yet perilous danger: the potential to succumb to apathy. Apathy within matters of faith can stealthily seep into our lives when we become overly comfortable or complacent, resulting in a weakening of our connection with God. This article will explore the perils of apathy in the context of the Bible Belt, while drawing insights from Scripture to illuminate the path towards spiritual vigilance. Number one, apathy's gradual erosion of faith. All right. So while some people are saying to, like, gospel preachers like me or Nathan Franson, like, how in the world can you be up there working? Don't you find it difficult? Don't you find the people antagonistic? Listen, I'm here, Nathan is there, and we are being tried by fire every day. If we remain faithful, we're going to come out of it more pure. Our faith is more precious than gold that's been refined by a refiner's fire. So we're not going to fall into the trap of complacency and apathy. So apathy resembles a slow-acting poison that gradually numbs our spiritual sensitivity. Amidst the vibrant atmosphere of the Bible Belt, where churches abound in faith is openly embraced, there exists a risk of taking our faith for granted. Jesus warned against this in the book of Revelation, addressing the church in Ephesus. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Revelation 2:4. even in a spiritually vibrant community, it's feasible to lose the fervor we once possessed unless we actively guard against apathy. All right. So we have a danger of leaving our first love, because you know what? If I'm a member of the Church of Christ and everybody around me is a member of the Church of Christ, I might focus on that more than I focus on Jesus. Dan Winkler opined in a sermon at Polishing the Pulpit one year. He said, whenever you get a group of people who are members of denominations in a room, they start talking with one another. They start talking about Jesus, Jesus this, Jesus that. Whenever you get a group of Christians, members of the church that Jesus built, the church about which he spake when he said, upon this rock I will build my church. In other words, a group of members of the Church of Christ. He said they don't mention Jesus. They mention Christ, because they're focused, it seems, more on the liturgy, more on the being right than being in a relationship with Jesus. Now, you can focus on either end of that to the exclusion of the other and bust hell wide open. I'm just, for the point for this podcast, I think being in the heart of the Bible Belt and everybody we're around being right with God, we would focus more on that and more on our relationship with God through his commandments, precepts, and divine examples versus our relationship with God through his son, Jesus. In other words, we focus on being right rather than focusing on practicing first century Christianity to everybody we come across. That's just a pitfall that we can fall into. Now, even in a spiritually vibrant community, it's feasible to lose the fervor we once possessed unless we actively guard against such apathy. All right? That's right, John. There needs to be balance. Could it be that many people leave the church because we become too complacent or apathetic? Yes, I believe that is the case. I believe what happens is whenever somebody comes up out of the watery grave of baptism and they are on fire, we have some of our brethren throw a wet blanket on them to put that fire out because, quite frankly, it makes them look bad. It makes them look bad. I was a guest speaker at a congregation and I preached, and you know how I could tell I preached a hole in the ground? Because of all of the amens and the that's right from the congregation. And I saw people who were teary-eyed because of the sermon. And it was a call to be more evangelistic. It was from Romans chapter 9. I say the truth in Christ, I lie not, my conscience will also bear me witness in the Holy Ghost. I have a great sorrow and heaviness of heart for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. Paul says, I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. And I just developed some thoughts from that. And I was like, when's the last time you looked at the person that sold you gasoline and you toyed with the idea about trading your soul for his? You would spend an eternity in hell so he could spend an eternity in heaven. Paul toyed with that idea. Now, that grammatically, that's subjunctive. I could wish that myself were accursed. In other words, logically, Paul knew he couldn't, but if it weren't in his mind already, the Holy Spirit wouldn't have had him write it down. In other words, that was Paul's attestation. He said, I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. He loved people that much. And that was the admonition. That was the call to action. Love people you meet enough to maybe not toy with the idea of swapping eternities with them, but at least putting yourself out there and being uncomfortable and risking rejection. And the preacher, he's not preaching there anymore, but the then preacher got it behind me and told the people that the reason I was so evangelistically minded and so on fire is because I was a recent graduate of Memphis School of Preaching, and just give it a few years and that fire will die down. He said that, folks. Heart of the Bible Belt. He threw a wet blanket on my sermon. I think that's a good indication as to why he didn't last very much longer at that congregation. Anyway, so there is a gradual erosion of faith when it comes to apathy, and that is a unique danger with the Bible Belt. Now, there's unique dangers in California. There's unique dangers in New Brunswick, Canada. There's unique dangers in Budapest, Hungary. There's unique dangers in Tanzania, Africa. But I would dare say that a gradual erosion of faith because of apathy would not be one of them. Now, lukewarmness, a state of lethargy. So the peril of spiritual apathy becomes most apparent in the concept of being lukewarm. In the book of Revelation, Jesus addresses the church in Laodicea, proclaiming, I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Revelation 3:15 through 16. This caution underscores the danger of complacency. Being lukewarm in faith not only displeases God, but it also distances us from the vibrant, transformative relationship he intends for us. Now, think about this. You have Christians that are cold, and they are good for the congregation if you use them wisely. You have Christians that are hot. They are good for the congregation if you use them wisely. Both of these spectrums are good. But if you have somebody that's lukewarm, they're neither hot, they're neither cold, they're just tepid, they are bad for a congregation. In other words, they will only halfway commit to something. There will be things that are left undone. There will be projects that are half finished, and it's just a mess. It's just a mess. There'll be some timing. I call them sometime in Christians. They'll only show up sometimes. You can't depend on them for the roster. You just can't depend on them. That's lukewarm. And you know by the way they treat the worship assembly that they are that way in their discipleship. You see, God intends for us a vibrant. I'm gonna look up that word vibrant for us. I used it on purpose. Let me give you a non-Tony definition. Full of energy and enthusiasm. Their discipleship in the world is not energetic. It's not enthusiastic. They're almost like the people that would show up on door knocking Saturday and go knock, knock, knock. And the people come to the door and they say, you wouldn't want to be interested in a Bible study, would you? I hope you're not. They wouldn't really do that, but that's kind of the vibe that they give off. Our discipleship is supposed to be full of energy, enthusiastic, and is supposed to transform us. Look at Romans chapter 12. We're supposed to be transformed, not conformed. Hello, Sheila Cole. Hello, Angie B. That's right. Many seasoned Christians spiritually retire. Folks, there's no such thing as spiritual retirement. That's one thing. God doesn't expect you to die for Christianity, or he doesn't command you to die for Christianity. He expects you to die for Christianity if it comes up, but he does fully expect you to work until you die. All right. So when it comes to navigating spiritual complacency in the heart of the Bible Belt, we've got to be on lookout for apathy's gradual erosion of faith. We have to be on guard for lukewarmness, the state of lethargy. And we need to answer the call to diligence and zeal. So dwelling in the Bible Belt ought to serve as an opportunity to cultivate deeper faith rather than an excuse for complacency. The Apostle Paul exhorted the Roman believers, not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Romans 12:11. The continual exposure to religious activities and fellow believers should propel us to possess greater zeal in our pursuit of God rather than permitting us to settle into a state of apathy. If you're not using the resources that you have at your disposal, the vast amount of resources that you have at your disposal to stoke the fire of your faith, then you are missing out, and it's nobody's fault but your own. We are called to vigilance and zeal. And we should be vigilant. We should look around for opportunities. There are opportunities to serve. I always go back to this story, and it could be apocryphal. You judge for yourself whether or not these things are so. But the story is about Johnny Ramsey. And a woman calls him, an older woman, and says, I'm so frustrated. I'm so discouraged. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I guess I'll just go eat worms. No, she didn't say that. But that was the attitude, right? And Brother Ramsey, as the story goes, he says, sister, you make me sick. Go bake a pie, carry it to brother or sister so-and-so who's a shut-in, and leave me alone. I'm busy. And he hangs up on her. That's the way, that's in effect the way the story goes. I know I change it a little bit with each retelling. That's why I often wonder whether or not it's apocryphal, because I wonder how many times it was retold or changed, rather, before I got a hold of it. Anyway, so Sunday rolls around, and the woman comes marching down the aisle, and she says, Brother Ramsey, I've got a bone to pick with you. I got words for you. He said, I figured you might. She said, I've never been so mad at anybody in my life, and I was mad at you that past other day on the phone, and I couldn't do anything but do what you said. I went and got a pie, took it to the shut-in, and we sat for about 3 hours on their screened-in front porch drinking coffee and eating pie, and I'm so thankful that you did that, and I'm so thankful that I did that. Folks, we are called to look for opportunities to bolster our faith, and we're called to look for opportunities to apply our faith with zealousness, with zeal. Do not settle into a state of apathy. You are greatly blessed. Remember, I said I have a disdain for the comforts of the Bible Belt. I do not have a disdain for the Bible Belt. Do not allow yourself to be comfortable. You tell your gospel preacher at the congregation, hey, look, preacher, it's been about 6 months since you've made me real mad. You're not preaching the way you oughta. Gospel preaching is supposed to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, and I'm not afflicted, so you need to afflict me through your sermons. Man, if you did that, he would look at you like you grew a third eye. Every gospel preacher ought to be given permission collectively by the congregation to make them just real mad every once in a while. And if they don't have that permission, they need to have a good set of elders to run interference between them and the congregation when it does happen. Because if he's worth his salt, he's going to afflict you in your comfortableness. That's all I got to say about that. Here's an interesting one. We have to make sure that we're safeguarding against spiritual drift. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1 presents a solemn reminder. Therefore, we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. Don't slip, folks. Give the more earnest heed. You're in the buckle of the Bible Belt. You're in the heart of the Bible Belt. You have Christians everywhere. You're not suffering from Elijah syndrome. There have been 7,000 haven't bowed knee to Baal nor kissed his ring. You're not alone. There's safety in numbers. Because of the fact that you're in the Bible Belt, you ought to give more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, because you could fall into apathy and complacency. Apathy often leads to spiritual drift, where we gradually deviate from the truths and principles we once held dear. The cultural familiarity with faith prevalent in the Bible Belt can sometimes create a false sense of security. yet our focus should perpetually rest on Christ and his teachings. Now, I said the Bible Belt here, but it could easily you could swap Church of Christ for Bible Belt. I'm a member of the Church of Christ. I've arrived. This is the end of my journey. No, 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 no. I urge everybody to go to Christianity Now Facebook page and search out the little video where a Viking is being baptized and read a lot of the comments. Folks, I think in some ways the denominational world has a better understanding of baptism than we do. Because even though they were mistaken a little bit, I was trying to think of a good word, even though they had some misconceptions about the actual purpose of baptism, theologically speaking, people intuit, hey, baptism is something you're supposed to do. You can't ignore it. And baptism is not an end of a process. Baptism is the beginning. I think in the Church of Christ, we have taught so often that baptism is the end and not the beginning. Folks, because you are in the Church of Christ, because you're in the Bible Belt, because you're surrounded with believers, you ought to give more earnest heed to the things which we have heard and been taught, because it's very possible we could let them slip. We could fall into the trap of spiritual drift. And I've seen it happening. I've seen it happening. And that's all I'm going to say about that. All right. Also, we need to focus on the joy of salvation, rediscovering the joy of salvation. Listen to this. Psalm 51, verse 12. The psalmist entreats, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit. When apathy diminishes our spiritual perception, we forfeit the sense of awe and wonderment at the gospel's message. Residing in the Bible Belt should motivate us to recapture that profound joy derived from a vibrant relationship with Christ, rather than allowing it to wane due to indifference. Why would it wane due to indifference? What is the indifference I'm talking about here? Everybody I meet's a Christian. Everybody I meet's saved. Everybody I meet's quote unquote churched. So they don't need it. They reject me. They don't want to have a Bible study. And if they want to have a Bible study, they're already saved and I'm just preaching to the choir. So what good am I doing? No, no, no. You need to rediscover the joy of salvation. Listen, let's give a non-Tony definition of vibrant. Again, full of energy and enthusiasm. You should have a relationship with Christ that is full of energy, that is enthusiastic, and you should be that person in your congregation that folks who are apathetic, it is uncomfortable for them to be around you. So, residing in the Bible Belt can provide a nurturing environment for our faith, but it also exposes us to the danger of spiritual complacency. By remaining vigilant and proactively guarding against apathy, we can cultivate a deep and transformative relationship with God. Let's heed the scriptural warnings, sustain our zeal, and perpetually seek the Lord with all our hearts, ensuring that our faith remains unwavering and vibrant. There's that word vibrant again. I used that as a key word for the article. Amidst the familiarity of our culture. Folks, being in the Bible Belt carries its own pitfalls and problems. Let's guard against it. Now, being outside of the Bible Belt carries with it pitfalls and problems too. You know, in the Bible Belt, whenever COVID threatened to shut down the worship services, everybody in the Bible Belt just said, nope. We gave you a couple of weeks. We're not giving you any more. We figured out that this is not what you said it was. So we're just going to continue to meet. Do you understand when I tell people in Canada that they cannot wrap their mind around it? because the government. You got to follow the government regardless. So, there's rumors about lockdowns and mask mandates and stuff like that coming in September and October because of a new strain of COVID that's in Canada. I'm curious to see what the provincial government, that's like the state government, the province of New Brunswick, what the governor and staff, the government of New Brunswick rather, is going to do. But you know what? I know because of my influence here, I know what we're going to do because we've already had a kind of an impromptu meeting about it. In class, somebody asked about it, so we just decided to talk about it. And we have a contingency plan in place where we're not going to miss a single service regardless of what the government says. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go meet at the building and hang a sign that says we're in violation of the edict. No, we're going to go underground, and we got plans to do it. Hello, Tony Calder, and good to see you. So, anyway, what's the point with all this, folks? Everybody everywhere needs the gospel, and everybody everywhere is dealing with problems. All God's children got problems. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, go read that, and you'll find a verse in which is stated, there is no temptation or test or trial overtaken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, all right? God will not allow you to be tempted above what you're able, but God is faithful with the temptation. He's made a way of escape. Take advantage of the way of escape. Every place has got trials and temptations. Folks, I love my brethren down south. I do know that it's a weird kind of culture, and I know that I'm way more comfortable away from that. I don't like it. But that's just me. What if everybody was like me and there were no gospel preachers in the southeast of the United States? Well, that means the Bible Belt would be somewhere, because like-minded people tend to gather, do they not? So this is just one of those things. I'm probably for the rest of my life going to be a gospel preacher that is outside of the norm, outside of the Bible Belt. And that's good. I kind of hope I'll live up here until I die, because the congregation, the work is going good up here. It's a difficult work. It's a hard work. But we're growing. We're in negotiations and research and development when it comes to adding on to the building or building a new building. We got folks that already have permanent residence that's moving from out of the country to be a part of our congregation. And I was told that they're doing that in large part because of the congregation at Riverview. So anyway, we're just going to continue to grow. And if you come up to visit Riverview from the Bible Belt, you're going to have some culture shock. We a little different, but we're sound. We're not unscriptural. And I wouldn't trade the problems and pitfalls of living here and being a gospel preacher here in the Bible Belt of the United States. I wouldn't trade them for the world. Angie B says, I find it difficult to talk religion or politics with most folks at church. Being set in your ways keeps you from moving and growing. Absolutely, Angie. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, for instance, I talk about the difference between Democrats and Republicans a lot, or Democrats and Republicans a lot. And I always make sure to state that, 50 years ago or even 30 years ago, it wasn't the case. And I think one of the reasons you have an issue with the verboten, with politics being verboten for discussion, is because people are so complacent and apathetic that they are still uninformed, and they think that Democrats and Republicans are still a left wing and a right wing that's trying to fly the same bird. But that's not true anymore. There's been such a rift where now it's a separation of morality. And we need to have those conversations. And the problem is you cannot have them in a complacent congregation in the Bible Belt. But I tell you what we do, we talk about it up here a lot. And I don't start the conversations. You know, we talk about, or it's talked about because people bring it up in the congregation because they are wanting to know how to navigate politically, and they want that information to come from a spiritual source. So they go to the Bible to figure out how to navigate politically. Well, that's the way it needs to be done in the buckle of the Bible Belt. If in the buckle of the Bible Belt, if every state in the Bible Belt voted their values, every state in the Bible Belt politically would be deep red. There would be no Democratic states in the Bible Belt. And there's almost not, but anyway, that's another conversation. I hope that I have said something in this congregation, something in this conversation that's bolstered you, that's encouraged you, that's edified you, that has made you decide to re-up and rededicate your life and find that vibrant, transformative walk with God that you may have had at one time, but through complacence and apathy, you've allowed to have that drift. Let me get this comment. I have a page that hold on a second. I have a page that Pure MR in contact. Oh, I have a page that puts me in contact with people and Christians suffering from many things. I make a practice to call a sister 2,000 miles away in hospice care. Having PTSD, it's sometimes hard to hear her screaming in pain, but I tell her I've got her hand and pray with her almost daily. I feel blessed because she has one. She's alone. It is sad, and I'm all she has. Absolutely. And you know what? With your situation where you're kind of homebound and stuff like that, that's where, you know, the internet greatly helps. And I'm assuming that relationship that you have with her is a blessing, you know. So yeah, there's ways you can do. You've got to be vigilant. You've got to look around. You've got to look around for opportunities. And always when you take the opportunity to serve, do it. Just remember, it's 1 John chapter 2. Little children, these things write I unto you that you sin not. But if any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. And if you're ever doubting your faith, if you're ever doubting that you are in fellowship with him, here's what you do. Now, that's not what the scripture says, but that's what it's teaching. Hereby do we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. Folks, be sober, be vigilant. Our adversary, the devil, walks around as a raging lion, seeking whom he may devour. So, you know what the devil's not ever going to do? The devil's not going to be able to devour you while you're out there in your armor, your helmet, your sword, your shield, your breastplate, your girdle, and your feet that are shod. He's not going to attack you and try to get you away while you're with a group of Christians that are so armed, while they're doing what Christians do. That's how we guard against apathy. Be vigilant. Look around. Look for opportunities to serve. I don't care if you're in California, Canada, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, Djibouti, Ireland, Scotland, England, Australia, Brazil, Argentina, Antarctica, Russia, Germany. It doesn't matter. Look for ways to serve. If you're in the middle of the Bible Belt, if you're living in the Bible Belt, don't be complacent and apathetic because you think the fight is already won. Just like baptism is not the end of a journey, it's the beginning. The fact that you're a Christian is not the end of your journey, it's the beginning. You've got a helmet, you've got a sword, you've got a shield, you've got a girdle, you've got a breastplate, you've got your sandals, your feet shod. Get out in the fight. That's all I've got. Folks, this has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. If you like what we do and want to support us, then you can do that through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. That's their buymeacoffee.com/Christianity Now or patreon.com/Christianity Now. And you can subscribe to Cogitations on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and Podbean. That's it. Matthew 28:18-20. Teach, baptize, teach. And the thing about it is that's just, it's so simple, yet it is so profound. If you want to make sure that you're not falling into the trap of apathy, then just do. Just do. And whatever you do, don't be a wet blanket to somebody who's on fire. That's all I've got. God bless you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. I'm going to try to get my Substack fixed, and we'll catch you on the flip side.